You know you're capable of more. And that's probably what makes it so frustrating. You have ideas you keep thinking about, goals you keep postponing, and a version of your life that you can clearly imagine, but somehow never seem to reach. You tell yourself you'll start soon, when you have more time, when you feel more confident, or when you finally know exactly what you're doing. But deep down, you already know the truth. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're waiting to feel ready. And that moment may never come. Because sometimes, the biggest thing standing between a person and their potential isn't a lack of talent. It's the fear of discovering what happens when they actually try. You might think your problem is motivation, discipline, or time. But underneath all of that could be something much deeper. The fear of being tested by reality. Think about it. As long as you never launch the business, you can believe you could have built a successful one. As long as you never publish the book, you can believe you could have written something incredible. As long as you never start the channel, you can imagine yourself becoming successful at it. Your potential stays perfect because reality has never had the opportunity to challenge it. You can believe in the best version of yourself without ever having to prove it. But the moment you take action, everything changes. Your first video might get 10 views. Your business idea might fail. Your application might get rejected. Your work might not be as good as you imagined. And suddenly, you have to face something uncomfortable. Maybe you're not as good as you thought, or maybe you are. But there's only one way to find out. You have to put yourself in a position where reality can answer. This is where procrastination gets interesting. Not everyone procrastinates by doing nothing. Some people procrastinate by doing everything except the thing that actually matters. They watch another tutorial, buy another course, make another plan, download another productivity app, organize their workspace, and research the competition. At the end of the day, they feel productive. But the actual work is still untouched. That's called productive avoidance. It feels like progress because you're doing things related to the goal, but you're avoiding the one thing that could actually move you closer to it. You're preparing to start instead of starting. And the longer you do that, the easier it becomes to convince yourself that you're simply not ready yet. But maybe you don't need more preparation. Maybe you need more exposure to discomfort. Most people say they're afraid of failure. But failure itself isn't always the real fear. Sometimes the deeper fear is what failure would say about you. Imagine giving something everything you have. You work for months, sacrifice your time, take the risk, and then it doesn't work. Now you can't say, I never really tried. You tried. You gave it everything. And that possibility can be terrifying. As long as you don't try, you always have an excuse. You were too busy. The timing was wrong. You needed more experience. You needed more money. You needed more knowledge. But once you actually try, those excuses disappear. Your ego suddenly has nowhere to hide. If you never test yourself, you never have to discover your limits. And here's something even stranger. Sometimes people aren't only afraid of failing, they're afraid of succeeding. Because real success comes with responsibility. If your work suddenly takes off, people expect more from you. If you become successful, you have to maintain it. If you become confident, you can no longer hide behind insecurity. Success can change your identity, and humans naturally resist major changes, even positive ones. Your current life might not be the life you want, but at least you understand it. You know its routines. You know its problems. You know what tomorrow looks like. Your potential represents uncertainty, and uncertainty makes the brain uncomfortable. So sometimes people unconsciously choose a familiar disappointment over an unfamiliar possibility. Then you open your phone, and suddenly everyone looks ahead of you. Someone your age is building a company. Someone else is traveling the world. Someone is getting in incredible shape. Someone launched a channel 6 months ago and already has hundreds of thousands of followers. And you look at their finished result while comparing it to your unfinished beginning. That comparison is unfair. You're seeing their highlight reel. You're not seeing their failed attempts, the terrible first videos, the rejected applications, the nights they wanted to quit, or the years nobody noticed them. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's final product. And then you use that comparison as evidence that you're behind. So you hesitate, you wait, you lose another month. And now you're even further from where you wanted to be. That creates a vicious cycle. You feel behind, so you avoid starting. Because you avoid starting, you fall further behind. The longer the cycle continues, the harder it feels to break. Here's where this becomes serious. The biggest danger isn't failing. Failure is usually temporary. You try something, it doesn't work, you learn, you adjust, and you try again. The bigger danger is never giving yourself a real chance, because years from now, you might not remember the small failures, but you may remember the things you never attempted, the business you never started, the relationship you never pursued, the creative project you never finished, the opportunity you kept telling yourself you would take someday, and eventually, someday becomes years. That is the quiet cost of unused potential, not dramatic failure, regret. The painful realization that you spent years protecting a version of yourself that you never allowed to exist in the real world. You knew you had something inside you, but you never gave yourself a real opportunity to find out how far it could go. So how do you break the pattern? Not by becoming a completely different person overnight, not by waking up tomorrow and creating a perfect new life, and definitely not by waiting for motivation. Start smaller, much smaller. If you want to write 1 page. If you want to create videos, make 1 imperfect video. If you want to start a business, take 1 real step toward it. The goal isn't to prove that you can completely transform your life in 24 hours. The goal is to give yourself evidence. Evidence that you can act even when you're uncomfortable. Evidence that you can keep promises to yourself. Evidence that fear doesn't get to make every decision for you. Because confidence usually doesn't come before action. Confidence is built by surviving action. You do something difficult. You survive. You learn. You realize it wasn't as terrifying as your mind predicted. Then you do it again. And slowly, your identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to become disciplined. You become someone who takes action. The next time your mind says, I need to learn a little more first, pause. Ask yourself, am I actually preparing, or am I avoiding discomfort? That question can change everything, because you don't need to eliminate fear. You need to stop treating fear like an instruction. You can be nervous and still start. You can be uncertain and still move. You can feel unqualified and still apply. You can be embarrassed and still publish. You can fail and still continue. The goal isn't to become fearless. The goal is to stop letting fear decide what your life becomes. There is a version of your life that exists only in your imagination right now. Maybe you can see it clearly. The person you could become, the things you could build, the places you could go, the life you could create. But imagination has no consequences. Reality does. And at some point, you have to stop protecting the imaginary version of yourself and give the real version a chance. You don't need to prove that you have potential. You probably already know that you do. The question is whether you're willing to test it. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop collecting more information. Stop making another plan. Take 1 uncomfortable step, then another. Because potential means nothing if it stays inside your head. At some point, I could has to become I did. This is Veltrix Mind, where we explore the psychology behind the way you think, behave, and become the person you are capable of becoming.